Today I'm going to show you how to make this 1/44 scale doll's house. And I'm making mine for the craft shed project, but obviously this is something that could be a little standalone project. And I've decorated mine on the outside and on the inside. But it's a project that you could sort of complete to this stage, or you could perhaps just leave it as an undecorated doll's house, or you could maybe just do the inside and have the doors open, or you don't have to attach the doors, you could have those sort of separate and maybe stand in alongside the table in the craft shed. It's entirely up to you, so you can sort of spend as much time on it or as little as you want. So the cutting list is in the description box below. Coming up next is a list of the tools you'll need. I'll tell you what else we need as we go along, and I'll also give sizes for the doors and all the sort of smaller little bits that we add on as we go along. Okay, so for this project I've used a 0.8mm thick craft wood, and that's 1/32 of an inch, and again I've used my favourite, a beche. You'll need a craft knife. This is a Swan Morton knife which takes a size 10A blade, a steel rule, a nice sharp pencil, an eraser, a suitable wood glue or PVA, cocktail sticks for applying the glue and removing excess glue from along the joins, masking tape and scissors for holding parts together whilst the glue is drying, a scribe, nice sharp pair of scissors. I've used washi tape for hinging the doors, but you could use masking tape, paint, and you'll need a white or a cream, a light colour, and then a darker colour for the roof, and I've used a off black. Brick paper, obviously for the external walls, and I printed this online but quite a while ago, so I can't remember where I got it from. But if you actually do a Google search for 1/44 scale brick paper, I'm sure you'll be able to find an image on there. Acetate for the windows, and that's optional, you don't have to glaze the windows. And then just a small amount of gold foil. Anything else we need I'll tell you as we go along. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so we're going to begin by cutting the apex for the roof. So start with the two side pieces, and of the sort of 5 similar sized pieces you've got, these are the wider two pieces, wider across the piece like that. So turn the piece onto its side, and we're going to do a pencil line 33mm or 1 19/64 of an inch from what will become the bottom edge. So just do a little pencil mark at either side on each of the pieces. 33mm, 1 19/64. And then turn the piece and join that line up, and you just want to place the rule just below the pencil marks to allow for the thickness of your pencil nib. Like that, and then make a pencil mark in the centre along the top edge, like that. Again, do that on both pieces. And then you want to turn the piece, and we're going to cut diagonally across there and on both sides. So again, you want to place the ruler so it's just below that top of that pencil mark and the end of that line, and then cut across. And just gently do a gentle score, just because you're using the thinner wood it can split at the end, so I like to just do a little nick at that end as well, and then cut across. Turn the piece and do that again, making sure that you're sort of staying in the centre up there. Like that. that, do that with the other piece as well. Put those to one side, and then take your central floor, base and top pieces, that's the other sort of 3 pieces in the thinner wood, and you want to draw pencil lines on each piece, 18mm or 45/64 of an inch from each side. So again, make your little pencil mark, 18 there and 18 from this side. And this is for helping us place the divides. And then turn that and join those up. Do that on each of those pieces. Like that. And then take one of those pieces which will become the central divide, and we're now going to make a little hole for the stairs. So begin by drawing a line, and we're just going to draw it in between these 2 lines we've done, so in the central area. So 3mm from this back edge, that's 1/8 of an inch, and 13mm from the back edge, and that is 33/64 of an inch. So 3mm and 13. Turn it around and join those up. And then we want to do 2 lines, this time going down ways, and they will be, just looking at my notes here, 6mm and 16mm from this right hand line, and again just in that little square we've just made, so 6 and 16, and then again down there 6mm and 16, and in inches that is 15/64 and 5/8 of an inch, and then do that little square like that, and then I'll just highlight that, and that's the piece we'll be removing. So to remove that section, make sure you've got a nice sharp blade in, so a fresh blade, and just begin by doing a little nick in each corner, just with the tip of the knife like that, and go against the grain first, that side as well, and this just helps the blade stay on track. There as well, and then you can make a little cut in the direction of the grain. Like that, so you've just got a little corner section cut out there, and then always cut against the grain first, and for a larger area I'd bring my rule back in and go along the side of that, but just because it's so small I'm just doing it sort of freehand. And that side as well. And then you can make the cuts in the direction of the grain. Already that piece is trying to come out, so just make sure it's cut everywhere before sort of freeing it. Still feel a little bit pulling in there. Like that. If you've got any sort of jaggy edges, you can straighten those off. So that's the central floor. Okay, so bring your side pieces back in, and we're now going to do a pencil line 16mm, 5/8 of an inch from the bottom edge, so the straight edge. 16 millimeters, 5/8 of an inch. Like that. Again, do that on both pieces. And then bring in your back piece, and we're going to do the same thing again, so 16 millimeters from what will become the bottom edge, 5/8 of an inch, join those up, and then again 18 millimeters from each side, so 18 millimeters, 45/64 of an inch from each edge. And this is all to help with placement of the divides and the floors. Like that. We're now going to mark up the doors for the window cutouts, and we'll start with the wide door, and we'll start by making pencil marks across the top and bottom edges, and I'll give you the millimetre measurements first, and that's 4, 14, 22, 32. And in inches, that's 5/32, 35/64, 55/64, and 1 17/64. So do those marks at each side, top and bottom, and then join those lines up. And then leaving the piece on its side, we're now going to do the lines downwards, and these will be, again in millimeters first, 3, 13, 19, 30, 3, 13, 19, 30 millimeters, and in inches that's 1/8, 33/64, 3/4, and 1 3/16. So 1/8, 33/64, 3/4, 1 3/16. And again join those lines up. And then we're not going to be doing a cutout for the door, which would be in the centre. We're going to be sticking a door on. So you just want to cut out the top left square and the top right square and the bottom left square. So your piece should look like that when you've marked it up. So I'm just cutting out these 3 pieces here. And then we'll mark up the narrow door before we begin cutting those out. And on this one, I'm going to draw the line downwards first, down the long edge. And in millimeters, that's 5 and 15. Same at the bottom. That's 13/64 of an inch and 19/32 of an inch. So 5 millimeters and 15 millimeters, 13/64 of an inch, 19/32 of an inch. Join those up. And then the lines to go down the shorter edge are the same again. So 3 millimeters, 13 millimeters, 19 and 30. And again in inches, that's 1/8 of an inch, 33/64 of an inch, 3/4 of an inch and 1 3/16. Join those up, and on this piece we're cutting out both of the central squares, top and bottom. So that piece will look like that. Okay, so when I did my practice piece, for every tutorial I do, I always do a practice piece or a trial run. When I was cutting out these windows, the wood split quite easily, and I think that's because you're cutting sort of more than one square from each piece, so it's kind of weakening the wood. So with our little sort of stair hole, it didn't happen, but when I was doing the doors it kept splitting. So what I thought I'd do is stick a piece of masking tape on the back of each door, so a couple of pieces on this, and I'm hoping that it will just sort of strengthen the wood as we're cutting into it, just kind of holding it together really as we're cutting and make it less likely to split. So stick a piece on the back of each, and we'll start with the narrow door. Oh, there's our little squirrel friend. Hello! We find him a nut. Hello? Never says thank you. Okay, so as I was saying, we'll start with the narrow door, and we're going to do the same thing again, just cut in the slits in each corner. And cut in against the grain of the wood first. Doing this at a bit of a funny angle. A little tiny slit, and try and go all the way through if you can. And then do the little slit in the direction of the grain. And I think as well it was splitting because we've got so many sort of little narrow bits of wood at the top and bottom of each split. And then you can actually begin cutting out, and remember to go in the opposite direction of the grain first. And with the tape on, it does actually feel a lot more sturdy. Be really careful of your fingers when you're doing this. Just always sort of be aware of where they are in relation to the blade. And then you can go in the direction of the grain. Okay, so I'm now going to just really carefully remove the tape. Put that down. Just be really careful here. And it's actually easy to remove if you place it down on your work surface. And then you can actually see if you need to make any more cuts. I can see that's not fully out down there. I'll try and ease it out, and then you can feel where you need to make more cuts. There. Do the same with the other window. There. So don't worry if they're not perfectly square, because we are going to be putting a little frame around which will square it off. And then you can do the same thing with the wide door. Okay, before we begin construction, I just want to make a template of these doors for when we paper them. And it's just that it's so much easier doing it before we've constructed than waiting until they're in place. So you can either cut around it or draw around it. I'm just going to cut around it for speed. Make sure you don't cut into the door, but I am just going to draw inside the windows. And then this is a template that we can use when papering the outside and the inside of the door. So do one for each door. And then you can just pop those to one side until we need them. Okay, so I've got some glue here, which I've dispensed onto a piece of card, and I'm using a cocktail stick to apply it. So I want to begin by applying glue along the short edge of the back piece. Pop that down on your work surface. I'm going to attach one of the side pieces so that the bottom of each piece is level. And your lines will line up and the apex will begin at the top of the back piece. Press those together. And then just pop that to one side and bring in your wide door. Now to attach the door, I'm going to use tape. Now this is washi tape, like a tape made from a rice paper, which is really good and quite strong, but you could use masking tape or any other sort of white tape you have. So the door will go on that way, so the two windows are closest to the side piece. So you want to apply tape just along that edge so it's not overlapping the window cutout. So just pop a piece of tape like that, cut it, and then just lay that door on so that sort of half of that edge is over the tape, like that. And then you can use your craft knife just to trim the tape level with the door. Get rid of that piece. Same the other side. And then either use your knife or your scissors just to trim along. And you only want about 3mm overhanging, about 1/8 of an inch. Get rid of that piece. And then lay the constructed piece, oops, can't pick it up, down on its side like that. And attach the door to it so that again the bottom of each piece is flush. Make sure it's touching all the way along. Press the tape down. And then just make sure the door closes okay. I'm just gently sort of manoeuvring it over more to that edge. Like that, and then you can lay the piece back down. We're now going to attach the top. So take the top piece, which is one of these that's got the two marks on it, and apply glue to one short and one long edge. And then you want to put that into place so that the pencil lines are on the inside. And I realise I've just put the glue at the wrong end, so let's apply a bit along that end. And this should sit just below that line on the side piece, and so that it's sitting along the top edge of that back piece. You've got a nice flush line along there. And push that into place and then bring up the back piece to meet it, and that will square it off. Just hold that into place while the glue begins to take. And then you can bring in a spare cocktail stick and just remove the excess glue from along the joins. Like that. And then pop the piece back onto the back piece like that. I just want to open that door a bit. And we're now going to attach the divides, and each of these will sit on the inside of that line, so each side will be on the inside. So again, apply glue to a short and a long edge. Turn that round a bit. Manoeuvre it into place before your glue begins to take. And I'm pressing down on this top piece here to press them together. And you just want to be able to see that line to that side of the divide. And you've got time to sort of jiggle it about before the glue begins to take. And then we're going to position the other divide again on the inside of that line. So apply your glue again. And it's quite difficult when you're working with this finer wood because you can't just sort of really press it together really hard. You've got to be really careful as you're working with it. Again, I can just see the line on this side of the divide. Now you want to take your central floor, and the cutout we made should be at the back, like that. And it will sit obviously below those divides and just above that central pencil line there. That just ensures that everything's lined up. So begin by applying glue along the bottom of each of those divides. And then to the short edge and along the back edge of the central floor. And first of all, I'm lining it up with that central line. So it's sitting just above that, so I can just see that line below the piece. Push it up against the divides, and then you can sort of have a little peep inside and just make sure the divides are still sitting just on the inside of those lines. And as well as sort of pressing this piece into that corner and against the back and side, you've got to make sure it's staying against the divides as well, otherwise we'll have gapping between the floors. Normally if I was building a unit using the thicker wood, I'd be really pressing this together quite hard now, but I'm just being really gentle with it. And I'll just leave that to dry for a little longer while I put some more nuts out for our squirrel friend. So now we're going to attach the bottom divides. And again, on the inside of that pencil line, and then you can line it up with the one above. And that one as well, again on the inside. Line it up with the one on the floor above. Pressing it into place again, just being really careful. And then apply glue again to the bottom of those divides. Bring in the base piece. And the pencil line should go on the inside. So push that into that corner. And up against those divides as well. Just very gently press it all together, making sure you've got a nice flush edge along the bottom. And then just pop that piece to one side and then bring in the remaining side and the narrow door. And that will go there like that, so we want to attach the door to that side. So lay them both down. And again, attach the tape along the edge of the door. Trim that off. The other side as well. That's my scissors, and you can trim along there again. That will stick along that edge of the side piece. And make sure they're up against each other. Sit down nice and firmly. And you can bring this piece back in and apply glue along these exposed edges. Oops. Lay that back down. And then attach the side piece nice and flush along that bottom edge. Along the back line as well. Carefully press it all together. Just make sure the door is closing all right. And you can sort of go inside and remove the excess glue. And I just want to put a little bit of tape around this just to hold that side in place while it dries. Okay, so I'm just going to put a piece around the bottom like that. I'd normally say pull that tightly, but I'll just say pull it carefully. And then I want to put a piece around the back like that as well. Again, pull really carefully. I want it to be quite firm, but don't sort of pull so the whole thing pulls apart. And then that can be left to dry. So just before we move on to the decorating stage, just make sure that the doors close nicely and just lay nicely together there at the opening. Because we've used the tape, they can sort of be slightly forward from the side, which this one is, so I just had to trim a little bit off this door, and I did that by laying it on the worktop and opening the door, and then using my smaller 6-inch rule and just laying that along there, and just trim the tiniest bit off, and then close your doors again and see how they fit, but just a little tiny bit at a time, because if you do too much, obviously you can't put it back on again, so it's best just to do a little bit, check it, and then do a little bit more if necessary, like that. And then the glue has dried, but I'm going to leave the masking tape in place for now until we need to decorate around there, just to add a bit of strength to the structure. And then what I'm going to do now is, because our next stage is to decorate the inside, I want to paint the ceilings, and I'm going to use a white emulsion for that. Actually, it's antique white, so an off-white matte emulsion, and I'm going to paint the ceilings, and then I'm going to paint along these front exposed edges, just to cover the wood really, so we've got no wood showing once the wallpaper and things are in. Like that. And don't worry about getting it on the walls inside, because we're going to be applying paper over all of the walls, so you don't have to be particularly neat in there. So I'm now going to leave that to dry, and I'll continue the decorating in part 2 of this tutorial.